So hi, I'm coming to you from my house in Denver. It's Tuesday, the 24th of March, I believe. And it's only been 10 days since we had our last class, and despite that, it seems like a much longer time. I mean, it started out that we were going to have class, and I was maybe going to give lectures, and some of you who were going to stay on campus were going to drop by, which I really liked that idea because then I'd have somebody to talk to. It's very hard for me to talk to nobody. But those plans did not work, and I guess for the better. And I imagine that most of you are home. The purpose of what we're going to talk about for the next 10 or 15 minutes is try to kind of lay out what class is going to be like for the rest of the semester. I know that most of you are probably concerned about how this is going to work out. I mean, gee, the stock market has plunged. People are talking about this being the most serious incident since World War II. I can't imagine that you aren't really concerned about a whole host of things, not only your health, but the health of your family, what the world's going to be like in the future. Yet, I want you to know that I am incredibly optimistic. I'm actually stoked about the future. And let me explain why that is. What this pandemic is doing is, in my opinion, it's a tipping point. It's where we're going to go from the world before the pandemic to the world after the pandemic. And the way we evaluate and use technology is going to change. The way we make policy and that kind of thing is going to change. As I've spoken with you guys before, most of the way we do technological policy now and science policy, the way we fund it, what we teach, all of this kind of thing is rooted in the past. It's rooted in our experiences during World War II, where technology played a very important part in helping us win that war. And after that war, we set in place policies and various agencies to fund technology and technological research. However, over the last years, 20, 30, 40 years, that mechanism that we put in place has ceased to work effectively for us. And people have lost sight of why we did it the way we did it. Now, what's going to happen is because of the pandemic, there's going to be this opportunity to now change and reevaluate what's going on. In a real sense, what we are is technological policy is in the bottom of some sort of an energy well. So there's some energy well, and there's some activation barrier to get out of that. And what the pandemic is going to do is just knock us right up there, and we're going to fall into a new place. The question is, will it be a good place, or could we just come right back where we are? That's why I'm stoked, because it's you guys who are going to determine where the future goes. It's not me. It's not people of my generation. It's people of your generation who are going to determine where and how we get there. So, what I'll explain is, as I'm sitting here looking at this, the question is, what should I be teaching in this class? Now, it's fascinating that the virus, the COVID virus, is infected. This whole problem, the pandemic problem, is all about molecular engineering. That is, the virus itself is a molecule, and in that molecule, it contains another molecule. It's RNA, and that RNA sequence that's in there, its structure of that RNA determines its properties, how it infects people, how it brings this about. And our fight to basically, first of all, to detect it is based on our ability to make molecules and determine the structure of that RNA molecule, and then to make molecules that bind to it in a particular way. And then the whole search for a virus is all based on the same kind of thing, that we need to make a molecule that resembles the virus or some part of the virus in such a way that it elicits an immune response. So this is like the most amazing example of molecular engineering that I could ask for if I really wanted one to show how important molecular engineering is. Now, the problem is that we see this in the newspaper, we see this daily, that, getting this vaccine and doing this, it will take a year to 18 months. And it's a problem to take that long, a year to 18 months. My God, the economy's going to totally shut down. We're going to have people dying. A year to 18 months. And this leads to a sense of hopelessness within the public. And I don't think it should do that. What I should think it should do is something else. And in order to make that point, I want to tell you a story. Now, that's my habit to tell stories, so forgive me, but I'm going to tell you a story. But before I do that, let me go grab a Diet Coke and I'll continue with the story. So give me a couple seconds. Okay, so I'm back. Thank you for pausing there for a moment. I've got my Diet Coke. I can't do much if I can't think without my Diet Coke. So the story I wanted to tell you took place about, maybe 10 years ago. I had a graduate student who has since gone on. He earned his PhD and he's since gone on. He's doing amazing things at the Fritz Haber Institute in Germany. But the situation was that he was my graduate student at the time. He'd given up a successful pro-bicycling career to become a scientist. And we found that he and I needed to be in Europe for a week or so in the middle of the summer. And I thought, okay, if we're going to be in Europe, if we have to be in Europe, let's go do a great bicycle ride, one that I'll remember forever, as I'm kind of a road bike enthusiast. I'm not real good, but I'm a road bike enthusiast. So I asked my graduate student, his name's Travis Jones, to put together a really great bicycle ride. And we spent about 5 days cycling through the Alps. Now, the centerpiece of this ride was this amazing 138-mile ride over 4 of the world's great passes, great road bike rides. In that process, we were climbing 17,000 vertical feet. And the very last climb of the day would take us from the bottom to the top of this famous pass, or this famous climb known as Alpe d'Huez. And for those of you who follow things like the Tour de France, you can find many examples of these great races, these great rides up Alpe d'Huez. So this was the centerpiece of a ride, and I had trained all summer for this. So started out, and the day just went pretty good. And Travis was kind enough to wait for me for the most part, and we finished up. We had done most of the climb. All we have to do is this last 10 miles up Alpe d'Huez, 10, 12 miles, something like that. It's not long. And we stopped at the little town at the bottom, and I bought some water because I had run out of water. And like an idiot, I didn't buy any food. I had also run out of food. This is the guy who knows all about the conservation of energy and what's going to happen, and the fact that climbing up this climb up Mount Alpe d'Huez is going to consume a minimum of 3,000 calories, and I'm now depleted. So we start out to climb Alpe d'Huez, and Travis goes ahead, and there's nothing he can do, so he goes ahead and climbs and leaves me. So I'm all alone climbing up Alpe d'Huez. And it didn't take long. I had gone up a mile and a half, and I was just thought I was gonna die. It was the most horrible feeling ever. What I remember most about this is the flies. There were flies. And if I could get my speed up to even a few miles per hour, the flies didn't land on me. But I was going so slowly that they were landing on me, and I kept telling them, I'm not a corpse yet. Don't do this. But I was so close to dying, and cars were going by, and people were shouting to me, you can make it. And I'm pretty sure, at least that's what I think they were shouting. They were shouting it in French. I'm pretty sure that if I had just flagged one of them down, they would have taken me up to the top. And I was so close. I was getting ready to absolutely die and give up. And then I get to this point where you can look down the mountain and you can see this amazing set of switchbacks that I'd already climbed up. Not only could you see the amazing set of switchbacks, but you could see one of the other mountain passes I'd done earlier in the day in the distance. And as I looked at what I'd already accomplished, I said, oh, come on, 4 or 5 more miles, this is nothing compared to what I have already done. And so looking back at what I had accomplished gave me the strength, the inspiration to continue on and finish that ride. And finishing that ride is still one of the highlights of my life. I still think back on that, and thinking about that ride when I'm just in a horrible situation always gives me strength. I can think back to the time when things were really bad and go, oh, this is nothing compared to what it was before. Now, if I had somehow just been slapped down on that mountain without any memory of what had happened in the past, with only the facts about the present and what had to be done, Mark, you have to climb 2,000 more vertical feet. You're absolutely, you're dehydrated. You have no energy reserves whatsoever. You have to climb 2,000 more vertical feet. I would have said, go to hell. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to flag down a car and go. So if I'm given just the facts about what's ahead of me, I have no desire to continue on. But my knowledge of what I've already done encouraged me to go on. Now, in a lot of ways, this is what we do when we educate people. When we educate people in science, engineering, technology, we basically give them the facts. This is what happened. This is what is. In my opinion, we don't very often explain to them what has been accomplished. And so what I want to do in the next several weeks with what's left of our class is I want to divide it into two pieces. Each lecture, hopefully, will have a piece where I talk about where we've come from. And then there's the other piece, which is the curriculum that Dr. Castor and I sketched out, which is from your book, which is, in my analogy, it's completing the ride. That this is going to be hard. Some of this material that we're asking you to do is going to be really hard, particularly in the circumstances you're confronted with. It was designed as interactive. It was designed to allow us to walk around and talk to you about what's going on, particularly one of the labs that I love that's going to be coming up called Entropy Explorer. So these are going to be hard, but I'm hoping you will find the strength to continue on. Now, this story has a bigger picture. It has a bigger meaning. When you go out into the world and you are a practicing engineer, a practicing scientist, a practicing technical person, and we're going through this period of reevaluation of what should be, I want you to take with you the story of where we've come from and explain to people that 18 months, we can get things done in 18 months only because of all the hard work that's come before. And if they want a different world, we need to invest now more so we can get that time down from 18 months to a month, maybe to a week. Maybe we can do the whole thing in just a matter of a few hours. It wouldn't be that incredible to looking at how things have developed to get to the point where we can say, this is what the world's going to be like, and this is what we do. So the fact of what we have accomplished is what should give you and the people you communicate with. I want you to communicate this with your parents and your friends and your grandparents and your employers and whoever it happens to be, the tremendous accomplishments we've made and now we're going to go through. So what I'm going to do is divide lecture into two pieces. We're going to have the first piece. We're going to talk about where we've been. And the second piece is you're going to be trying to climb that last couple thousand feet up the mountain to get to where you are and working hard to do that. And if you give me real effort in that, we're going to do well in this class. We're going to get through this class. Now, just briefly, what that last 2,000 feet is about is particularly relevant to what's going on today. We are going to be talking about the second law of thermodynamics. Now, the second law of thermodynamics tells us what can happen. And we're seeing what can happen today. It's what is allowed by nature to happen. So everything that's going on is allowed by nature, and it's because it conforms to the second law of thermodynamics. If you want to know how to stop those things from happening, you have to manipulate structures so as to make it impossible, according to the second law of thermodynamics, for this to go on. So It's particularly relevant, though that connection will be hard to see initially. We will get there in a few weeks. We will get to that connection between the virus and the second law of thermodynamics, believe it or not. So we're going to drive to that point. So things are going to follow that two-piece lecture process. And I had a little bit of fun making a few of these first part lectures. So some of them will be videoed, and you'll see one of those in just a few minutes. Today's class, we will film I'll show you the first one on where we've been, show you our starting point, and then we will actually perhaps not get as far in the second half of the lecture as I want, because we're going to have to give some time to seeing how effective Zoom is and how effectively I can use it, and if you guys can ask questions and that kind of stuff. So what comes out of today's lecture, second half lecture, will largely determine how the rest of the lectures will proceed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over and let's get started. See you in a bit.